Hello there, and welcome back to another edition of teissTalk. With me, your host, Jenny Radcliffe, coming to you live from an undisclosed location somewhere in the UK where I am melting. We have got a great show for you today. Later, I'm joined by Lee Morton, the Information Security Officer at On the Beach. And Danny Dresner, the professor, who's a regular on the show, both in the audience and on our panels, to talk all about third-party risk and vulnerability testing suppliers. I have no teissTalk mug to show you today, although the best comments or questions can still win one. So I am interested in all your comments and questions today to talk to me and our lovely guests. But first, we are going to speak to the professor again. Now, he's already been our head of the show guest for Jeff White, talking to us about all manner of cyber. So I'm going to speak to him today a little bit more about what he does and how it connects academia and industry. Welcome to the show, Professor Danny Dresner.
Hello, Jenny. Hi.
Hi, how are you, Danny?
Warm for the time of the year.
It is. Although it's clement. It's clement, sir.
I thought that was like a tangerine.
So listen, have all your students returned to whence they came, or are you still got full classes?
People always say this, oh, you academics and your long holidays. I mean, I'm privileged to teach the master's course, so we do September to September. So July and August is the real critical path where they finish their exams and they suddenly realize, oh my, etc. I have loads of research to do. I've got to get data. Maybe I shouldn't have left it until July before I do a survey with real people out there in the world, because everybody else is going on holiday. So this is a hot time for them, and I don't mean the temperature.
It's hard to study when it's like this. I remember doing my master's when it was in this weather, and it was just, you so don't want to be there. I feel for them all. It's a great group you've got, though. I've met some of them.
Oh, it is. Some of them do take things a little bit literally, because I was talking, there was times, you just need to think about what you're doing, leave the machinery behind, just go and lie out on the grass, stare at the sky and think. And, very keen. It's all of a sudden one of them saying, sorry, but there's only concrete where I am,
Oh, bless. Well, look, Danny, I want to talk to you a little bit. First of all, you've been on Jeff's show. Well, for those who missed it, you're Professor of Cybersecurity at the University of Manchester. So what, because I know that I can talk to you about almost any element of cyber. Talk to us a little bit about some of the initiatives you're involved in Manchester, because it's becoming a real hub, isn't it, for cyber and for the bridges between sort of academia and industry. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about some of the things you're involved with? It's
really, really taken cyber to heart. I mean, and right at the centre of it, and this is where the mix. I mean, it goes beyond just industry and academia. Essentially, we've got the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. We've got our regional mayor, just like over in Liverpool. But Manchester is up and coming, if it hasn't already arrived, to be one of the top digital cities. Now, one of the big things, of course, if you're digital, it's not just digital inclusion, it's the exclusion you get if somebody knocks you off. So they have really seen the idea of combining all the forces. So they orchestrate all of these different activities, and we've got 4 universities working with SMEs in particular on our cyber foundry, and we've gone beyond the usual fear, uncertainty and doubt of, come on SME, have some leaflets and click click on this website, but don't click on those links, how to confuse people and put them off in the first place. We go into places and businesses and have a chat, get the feeling, and we can find out what they're doing and how they could actually grow their business, which means more employment, more revenue for the area, by using cyber as a tool for growth. And having discovered that, we then kind of, depending on the expertise of the different institutions, will assign them a technical assistance team.
Well, do you know, I think this is very clever, though, the way it's happening, because it's approaching it. It always feels to me, when I look at what the foundry's doing and and the links with the unis, it's approaching it from lots of different angles. So that, if there's an SME, if there's a business that's not sure one thing, you look at it in lots of different ways. I think it's really clever, Danny. I mean, Why is it so important that there is that kind of outreach into non-cyber, into the general, into the masses? Do you think they've grasped the importance of having cyber capability, even if they are a small business now?
I don't actually think most businesses will have done. But the thing is that what we don't want is an echo chamber of cybersecurity experts all kind of essentially selling to each other, selling ideas and how to do things, because we don't understand, we don't know what the business opportunities are. That's what all of these, in this particular case, the SMEs have got. Thanks to Professor Lisa Short this week, I've learned that for years I have been using a Johari window to stuff. This is, I've got a new. Do you know about those?
Yes, Mr. Rumsfeld knows about those. All your known knowns.
I didn't know it had a name, and I was always, so it's only just this week, and it's always the case that we've all got a computer, so we're all a little bit expert, or at least we think we are. But in terms of there are legal opportunities, or or possibly risk constraints. So let's talk to the lawyers, let's talk to the accountants, let's talk to the engineers, let's talk to the chemists, let's talk to the cleaners, let's talk to all the people who can actually contribute and take that and use those to actually develop something which is actually going to run, because you've got all of that predictive capability based on all of that wonderful experience.
Do you know, it's so important, I think, to do that. And I think it sort of ties in with what we're going to talk to with Lee Morton a little bit later. And just for those of you who are expecting us to have a third guest, Beatrice, I'm afraid she's not too well at the moment, to do with vaccines and reactions to vaccines and things. So get well soon, Beatrice. But it's kind of something we're going to talk to about later in terms of taking expertise from other departments, taking expertise from other parts of the industry. It's really time for cyber to do that now. So it's so interesting that you're managing to bridge that gap. I always wonder, though, when you've got these classes, and I can see, just want to say a little namaste to Mira, because Mira Moore is in the audience today, and we love Mira. But just to say, you're in a unique position to look at all this, because you've got young people and people just starting out in their careers in cyber, looking to kind of make that journey into sort of, I suppose some of them go into academia, but a lot of them are looking to start careers in there. I mean, what's your view on all of this, Danny? Is it as easy as it should be for them to get jobs? There's supposed to be this skills shortage, but you're feeding in all the time to local industry. What's your view on all of that?
Well, we're trying to break down the barriers and kind of the stereotypes, and dare I say it, the HR departments, who automatically seem to have a template job application which says like must have degree and must have 5 years experience. And okay, maybe maybe I'm not qualified to talk about the experience, but I can say, and gosh, I shouldn't say this, with my university bosses perhaps listening in, you don't need a degree. That's just one of the routes. That's just part of the Johari window. And you need, they need the people who have broken things and come out and put things back together. And you need the people who can just go away and decide that, they don't necessarily want to get a broad view. They want to focus on one little aspect and do some, serious academic research. And if you get that mix, then you get a mix of people, and you get the not only the academic rigor, because you've got the academics in it, but you've got the industry relevance of the people who are working on it. And if you recognize where all of those talents are, and you nurture those talents, and you realize that nobody's going to hit the ground running, none of us ever hit the ground running. We all came up through the ranks, but somebody somewhere recognized that we had a little bit of aptitude, and it's that handful of students, some of whom you may have even mentioned already, who just go that little bit further to make the connections with the people working. And that's the real cyber stuff, isn't it? It's the steering, it's the direction, it's the realizing that you're not going to learn it all from a book. No. It's a little bit of hands-on, but that hands-on doesn't need to be, deep dive into finding the back door that the Russians have put onto the system. It might be just actually realizing that little psychological nudge, which will get people to do the right things and do the cyber equivalent of the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike.
Do you know, it's so important that someone like yourself, Danny, says this, because I think there's this horrible tendency, isn't there, to see everything as all or nothing. It's black or white. You know, it's either this massive emphasis on vocational qualifications and degrees and everything else, or people saying you don't need any of it at all. And it's just different. It's not that one's better or worse than the other. It's just different. I think it's really important that someone in your position can say that. And I appreciate what you're saying. You know, I wanted just to take a little bit of a different slant now. I mean, you keep your eye on the threatscape all the time and on what's going on. We're sort of 18 months into this pandemic. And yeah, I'd love to say, I was hoping that we could have said, after yesterday was this alleged Freedom Day, we're out of the pandemic, but I don't see anyone who really is taking that seriously, really. But 18 months into it, in terms of cyber, how have you seen it all sort of developing? What can you comment on now we've done that time in terms of the cyber and the pandemic links?
Well, now we're at is it the crossroads or the fork? Choose the navigational cliche of your choice. Going back, I'll get a little bit academic, and I'll quote Arnold Toynbee, the historian, who said that if he actually said civilization, never mind just a community or a country, if we're going to flourish, we need a challenge. So our biggest danger is to look at all the horrors that have gone on, and the good stuff as well, and do this got to get back to normal business, not to take the opportunities and actually move them forward. I mean, it's like the King Crimson song, isn't it? You know, the gardener plants an evergreen while trampling on a flower.
Yeah.
So, we have got an awful lot that we have done to move things forward. Certainly, I know myself. It's been an absolute killer. So it's changing over. I mean, it was great in the old days. Yeah, I mean, I might not get many holidays as an academic, but it's great. You just walk in with your slides and you wave your arms around and you do a lecture. And then I've had to think, well, actually, what if people can't attend it at that particular time? What if they haven't picked it all up? This misnomer that if somebody's a computer science student, and I'm blessed with other divisions and faculties and disciplines as well, of course they're going to have a computer. Might not have a computer. They might have to share it with siblings. They might not have a connection. So to be able to deliver what we're now sort of terming this kind of blended learning environment, to actually encourage people to take the materials and actually develop them themselves. Not only have I been stretched, but it's also stretching the students to find, new and perhaps more personal ways of learning and interacting, and perhaps having to use their initiative to go out and kind of meet more people online, which is perhaps something they hadn't thought about before from that point of view. And that's really moving things forward. So there's a lot of wonderful things we must capture and actually move forward. We don't want to go back to how it was.
That's so interesting to me as well, because yes, there's all the way that people pivoted, and it speeded up sort of digital transformation and other things. But I think what you're talking about a little bit as well is it sounds a bit like self-discipline as well. It's like the discipline to do this differently and not to lose that as we go forwards and things do return a bit to normal. Though it's difficult to think that we're returning to normal when you look at the news, I suppose, it makes me pause before I say that. So Danny, look, I love talking to you. I could talk to you all day. And there was one question when I knew you were going to be my lead guest that I had to ask, because Danny on Twitter does post a meme of the famous scene. Do you want to say which one it is, Danny?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I must admit, yes, please don't look me up on Twitter for a few days until I had a really sweary session the other day.
Daniel Tresner.
I know. It reminded me back when I was having some should we say, a very trying personal situation. I remember in one of these big open plan offices where you're all behind screens. So it's all this open plan, you can't actually see what's going on. And it was one of those silent, missing the dartboard moments as I was busy trying to sort something out, and slammed the phone down, started swearing my head off, and total silence, and a little voice came from behind one of the other devices and goes, "Are Jewish people allowed to swear?"
Apparently
which
so.
only sent me going. But this is absolutely, this is sort of, I suppose, the cleaner version. It's that moment back in the original Planet of the Apes film when Charlton Heston rounds the corner and sees that essentially humanity has has mucked things up, and he's saying, "Damn you all to hell." It sums up. It just sums up.
And it's the Statue of Liberty on the beach.
That, yes, with the Statue of Liberty, and it's the sort of counter. It sort of countered because I was inspired. I suppose you might say I posted it so regularly now. I might be accused of plagiarizing a constant meme posting by somebody not a million miles away.
No. There's not plagiarism. It's not the same thing. I don't even own the space. So we've got yes, but what the reason I brought it up, Danny, is because you do post that quite often, and it's strange, isn't it? And you were one of the most optimistic people, really. You were very optimistic. You try and see that glass half full all the time, but sometimes it's hard to think. And the question was to think like that. For me, it's hard to think like that. And the question I have for you before we finish this one-to-one is: are we looking at a sort of cyber apocalyptic dystopia?
I've got trilbies. I've got me really posh kind of roll up fedora up there. I've got various I've got various skull caps and the like. What I don't have, which is why you don't have me on the other show, I don't have a tinfoil hat. No, that mask is not a tinfoil hat. I think you've got to keep things in perspective. Firstly, there are a lot of people working very hard all the time. And I think that kind of idea of yes, there are going to be pockets of misery. I mean, it's happening to people all the time. Just look at how all the people around here are trying to get a ticket out of Northern Rail at the moment. Yeah. So, yes, there's lots of bad stuff happening, but do we see people, on the beach at Blackpool beating the sand as they see the ruins of the tower?
Oh, don't paint that picture. That's so poignant, too.
I think whatever people are doing, and I think one of the lessons that people, we've all had to move on. We've all had great tests of from a business jargon point of view. We've all had to test our business continuity plans. Yes. So there's all this protect, and maybe this is some of the stuff that we might get into in later discussions. But the challenge is not how we're going to avoid problems, or worse still, if we do have a problem, then who can we blame? It's how do we cope? And I love I think it's the Bank of England explanation of resilience, which is being able to absorb a problem rather than adding to it. Yeah, well, exactly. And let's hope that you're right. You often are. So, look, it was brilliant to talk to you one-to-one, Professor Danny. But I think what we'll do is, on that note of how we cope with everything, let's have a little look at our news item and bring on our guest. I just want to say again, I've got a few little things just before we bring Lee on. We've got Neil saying this is an opportunity to accommodate better variety of learning styles. And I think Lee's right about that. I think the different ways we learn to absorb information will help us cope and helps us get on with things. I think that's true. We've got computers in the hands of the wrong person can be the greatest weapon of mass destruction. Cybersecurity is always of importance to keep the bad boys away. And we've got Lee Morton, who's about to join us, saying Spaceballs version is better. Welcome to the show, Lee Morton, Information Security Officer from On the Beach. Spaceballs is better. I think you were just trying to wind the professor up, Lee.
No, it's just obviously Danny was talking about being Jewish, and obviously he was saying the fact that he's talking about the object on the beach, and obviously Spaceballs comes in, they roll out of the nose, so it just comes to my mind straight away. My daughter loves Spaceballs. She absolutely falls about, and the fact that it's an old movie, she still likes the idea of it.
What about Danny's picture of Blackpool Tower being on the beach? Oh, I can't. I don't. For some reason, Danny, that's really upset me, actually. Well, listen, Lee, welcome to the show. Do you want to just tell us? I mean, obviously, it had to be you this week when I was on vacay. Tell us who you are and where you work, mate.
Yeah, so I'm Lee Morton. I'm now 6 months into my role as Information Security Officer on the beach. Interesting part, prior to that, I worked for a different company that made hand sanitizer. So I'm the crazy idiot who went from an organisation selling loads of hand sanitizer to a company that's selling holidays in the middle of a pandemic.
So, why couldn't you bring Iggy Pop with you if you're on the beach? I've told you this before, Lee.
I've become addicted to that song. It's surreal. I'd never listened to Iggy Pop, and then that song came out, and he's obviously done all the adverts and more adverts for us, supposedly. And I just found myself addicted to Sunday by Iggy Pop.
Well, we love Iggy Pop. But look, just one more time, just to say to everybody that we were expecting Beatrice Ruiz Beato from NEC Europe, but she is unwell and unable to join us. So get well soon, Beatrice. So let's have a look at this. So, I'm expecting great things from both of you. So there's only two of you on my panel today. So audience, you absolutely can step up here and help us out as well. With some questions, thoughts and comments on today's topic. And let's look at today's news item. And, I picked this today just because it sort of went under the radar a little bit, I think. And what it is it's this joint advisory on GRU hacking cloud environments worldwide that's been issued from the National Security Agency in the USA, plus, the Infrastructure Security Agency, the FBI, both also in the USA, along with our NCSC, a joint advisory on GRU hacking cloud environments. It's from the Atlantic Council. It's a very good article, I thought. It's advised a few things and it mentions a few things, but let's just get some top-level thoughts on it first. Let's go to you first, Lee. What were your top-level thoughts on this? This is like collaboration across allies. This is stronger than anything we've seen before, I thought.
Yeah, but is it? If you look at it, a lot of these security organisations worked together previously. If we look at things like Stuxnet, there was collaboration between security organisations. It's just at this point, they're talking openly about it instead of the collaborations that are ignored or hidden from everyone. I think it's good, but does it bring perception of Russia as being the big bad? And realistically, not all Russia's bad. And not all China's bad. Doesn't mean that we're also perfect. I think my concern is regarding these kind of things. It's about the opinion we're putting across of a country or an organisation, and I don't believe that state in Russia, as people would see it, they're not all bad. That's my worry.
Well, I mean, the embassy denied everything, of course, and it has been commented on. What you've said has been echoed widely. Is that this very firmly now has become a geopolitical debate. It's affected future talks with Russia, Biden and Putin, who already were on rocky ground. I mean, Danny, this is noteworthy because it's so big, really, isn't it? I mean, I know what Lee's saying is true, but this is on a scale given everything that's gone on the last sort of 6 months.
I think it's definitely significant that it's this has now come out of the front, but even kind of Russia itself is such a mix of different issues. It's almost like a whack-a-mole. I mean, even if they were, are we supposed to wonderful they've fixed Russia? Well, what about Iran and
Korea,
and North Korea, all the other usual suspects. Just look at the fancy pew maps, and how many of these are coming from so-called friendly countries, friendly countries anyway. I mean, the interesting thing, I suppose, is that different countries have sort of different approaches. Some are there for disruption, some are there for smash and grab, some are there for kind of playing a long game of perhaps of world domination. What were we saying about dystopias? I must admit, Lee, I do apologise because every time you say on the beach to me, I think of Neville Shute. And yeah, and look it up, folks. teissTalk, little job for you. But Kieran Martin, Professor Martin, former head of the NCSC, summarised the problem from Russia, there's the global kind of stuff, and are they really going to be motivated to knock out the lights in Skelmersdale? Not quite sure about that.
Well, they might.
Well, there we go. But maybe they'll probably have to join the queue. Sorry, Skelmersdale. But the thing with Russia that he pointed out, I mean, and is the sort of stuff that is the real threat to all of us. Is the I don't think we've mentioned it. We haven't mentioned passwords. That's good, but we haven't mentioned ransomware. And he pointed out that the thing with Russia and ransomware is it's a perfect storm. Firstly, they've got a wonderful business model because we're making ourselves so reliant, and we haven't put in, never mind the protective measures so much as the recovery measures, because bad things will happen. It's like I was saying before about what do we do to be able to be able to cope. There is also the fact that we've also got our own weaknesses. There's a nice business model for them, and whatever agreements we may have around the world in terms of extradition, it's actually Russian policy that if somebody does something naughty to another country, they don't extradite them. So there's not even a negotiation to be had there.
No, it's. I mean, obviously they're saying they are advising a bunch of measures, and I'm just looking at some of the comments. We've got great comments. We've got Alan Jenkins on. Hi, Alan. And saying geopolitics in the cyber realm is not new news. Moonlight Maze dates back to the 90s. Moonlight Maze, you have the advantage on me on that one, I'm afraid. US, UK went public with tightened rain attribution to PRC in December 2005, so it's not new. We know Alan. We'll just see if Alan might be prepared even to come and join us in a moment, actually, because we love Alan. But they're advising a few things, which, like you say, Danny, it's basics, really. We've got things like they're advising companies for multi-factor authentication, timeout and lockout features, Lee. I mean, mandatory strong passwords, zero trust security, considered in that. This one, I was interested, Lee, in what you thought about this one. They said, and this is a geopolitical multi-government agency level of advised people denying inbound activity from known anonymization services such as VPNs and Tor. Is that what they're saying? Is that what do you think about that?
My concern is with that the business might have a need to do VPN, and I'm not saying Tor specifically, but obscure kind of connections. And if you start blocking those kind of services, you might actually damage your business. But the problem is let's get it right. If these guys want to compromise or avoid those kind of services, they'll just bring some up in Amazon. So realistically, does blocking Tor actually resolve anything if they can go and bring up a server somewhere else?
So, Danny, why would they say it, though? Because Lee's right, isn't he? I mean, I had an inkling, but why would they say it? Is it just, it says in the article, and I would urge you all in the audience to read this article. It's a great one. teissTalk has put it up in the comments. It says it's notable because it's an example of international collaboration to publicly name the TTPs. So that's interesting. I don't suppose, it is very specific what it says. And it says it was like drawing a red line. It defined the scope of US government's attitude to Russian cyber aggression. In other words, a geopolitical move. They've drawn that line in the sand. And I guess after SolarWinds, it's that kinetic response, isn't it? They're saying they will respond.
But and these are easy things to do. Let's back. It's a little bit like was it the other? I suppose the humorous historian as AP Herbert said. Let's find out what it is that everybody's doing, and stop them doing it. And of course, the whole point about these things. I mean,
sounds like cybersecurity industry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Dr. No versus the man from Del Monte, I think it was said once. But but it's like Lee said, these are the legitimate tools that we put together for security. So why would you actually ban them? And not only will they go elsewhere, people are then going to have to use less secure measures. And it's exactly the same as the old kind of people technology paradigm. People being our greatest assets, so they're our weakest links. Great. It's great to be able to rush out and come up with a nice slogan which will look good on a t-shirt, but cybernetics, the interaction, the adaptation, the steering through this great maze, it's far more complex like that. And the advantage that I've got working in Manchester is that we're actually led by the School of Social Science, not the School of Computer Science. Our Centre for Digital Trust and Society is not led by geeks like me. And that helps because that means we're looking at the business issues, the living issues, the life issues, not the, hey, look what I can do with this soldering iron.
So listen, thank you, Danny. I'm just so pleased because Mr. Jenkins. So because Alan was in the audience, we've invited him on stage. You need to unmute Alan. It's the quote of 2020. But we've asked Alan to come on because Alan has great comments on all of this, given the background in the mill sheet and everything else. But I don't know if he can hear me anymore. Oh, no, maybe not. Alan, I feel like that little maker. Alan.
Alan needs to press the button.
Hey, Alan, welcome to the show.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just perfectly.
You can hear me? Okay.
We can.
Let's see whether I can work out why I can't hear you. I'll shut up until I've sorted it out.
Okay, well, look, what we'll do, we'll come back to Alan. Let's talk about, let's get on to our main topic of the day before, you know what, there was only two of you on the panel. And of course, it being you two, we are going to use up all our time. But I suppose the reason that I thought that article would work quite well with the topic is the idea of it being that external party that's having an effect on what's going on in the organisation. So today's article is on third-party risk and vulnerability testing suppliers. What are your top-level thoughts on this to start off with? Should we go to Lee first?
Yeah, my concern always with this kind of scenario is the contracts that we're dealing with. So not talking about the business I'm in now, but previous business, those contracts are very aged, and security wasn't thought about when these contracts were signed up. And therefore, for us to implement the changes or the wants to implement vulnerability management and security testing of their infrastructure, a lot of the companies have come back to me and said, well, to do this, we're going to have to renegotiate our contract.
Yeah, well.
And that hit so many stumbling blocks on us. So the biggest issue I had was making sure that new contracts were signed with the requirements in place to allow us to do that kind of vulnerability and testing that potentially we can't get evidence of it at the point of when we start negotiating.
Do you know, this is interesting. We'll come on to kind of like what exactly we're asking them all to do. I think teissTalk, maybe if you get Alan back a bit later, if he can hear, because I think we just it's probably more helpful if you can actually start to hear me. But well, yeah, we'll get back to that kind of in a minute, Lee, because I'm interested. But I wondered, Danny, whether this was as much of a mindset as anything else. You know, that like, you know, do security people think it even should be our job to test the whole supply chain, or whether do we kind of want to believe that this is just a given with software now, even though we know it isn't?
You've hit the nail on the head. Yeah, supply chain. How far down the supply chain do you actually go? I mean, this is one of the big questions when never mind GDPR, everybody missed the fact there was this, was it the Network Information Security Directive as well, which, okay, never mind, I'm not belittling the importance of personal data, but this is all about keeping the lights on and the water running and the roads, traffic lights and all of that kind of critical infrastructure. Now, at what point do you stop looking at the people who are setting up the gantries and the control of the motorways down to the people who come and fix the plumbing in their offices? So what is it you're actually testing? How much you're actually going to test, how often are you going to test? I mean, most of the stuff that we do, I mean, this is one of the things, one of my other hats, one of the things that we're now sort of studying and looking for, particularly with IASME now, is looking at things like, Cyber Essentials. Cyber Essentials it's nothing more than a starting point, but it's such a very, very valuable starting point. At least it starts people on that particular journey. But it's how do we make sure that the good things are being done on a continuous basis rather than just on a kind of an annual audit and the like. So people still need to be broken out of the culture of thinking, phew, we got through our audit, we can relax, because, hey, guess what? Some of those baddies who we were talking about earlier don't care a pair of fetid dingoes' kidneys if you hold up a certificate and say, oh, we've had our vulnerability exposure tested, and there's nothing there. I mean, I had an argument with an auditor actually last week who claimed that a hospital was low risk because they have no vulnerabilities anymore.
But you see, isn't this the thing? Like, they don't know. I don't think a lot of organisations even understand this cyber risk, and I think one of the problems is that, you know, Danny's right, isn't he? Surely it's like, how do you select, you know, which vendors to push this and to be tough on? And, like, you know, we've got comments in the audience. We've got SPCs in the audience. Stuart saying test appropriate to risk, but understand the assets and the risk to those assets first. But, like, that's a huge job for some companies. He's right. But I worked with Nestle at one point. They had something like 250,000 first-tier suppliers.
Yeah, it took me a long time to work out the organisation where we actually had data and what systems were in place before I started to look at any kind of tooling or requirements. You have to understand the business. If you don't understand the business, you end up putting the wrong things in, or you don't protect the critical assets. And realistically, what is a critical asset? You have to understand the business to do that. Back at the last organisation I worked for, were manufacturing. So realistically, their critical asset was the products, the tools that created products.
Yeah.
But working for an organisation that does sells holidays, what's our critical assets? It's our customer data. It's our ability to be able to sell holidays to people. So it's our website. It's a different entity. And choosing what is your critical asset in one organisation and moving to another one can really cause issues. So you have to understand what is most important to the business.
Do you know what I think? And I have a big beef with this as well, because I think what we don't do very well in cyber, I think we've just started in terms of awareness training, in terms of getting the message out, to take lessons from our colleagues in marketing and in sales and in PR about how to make, you know, communication theories and how to, you know, make a message stick. But I don't think that we work very well internally with supply chain and procurement, whose entire job and academic disciplines and, like, you know, master's degrees in it and everything else. I just say, like, my master's is in strategy and supply chain. Their whole job is now to do this, but do we work close enough with them? Well, I would argue we don't. We think we're the department to know, but if you say procurement to an IT person, it's like they're the people who care, who give a toss where we buy elastic bands. And I mean, am I right?
I hate the idea that we're the department of no. When I walked into the organisation, that was one of the first things one of the senior managers that said to us, "You're the guy who's going to say no." We should never be saying no. We should always be looking at guiding. We should be there at the start to make sure that, you know, we say this is the way to go. And therefore, to do that, it's the same regarding procurement. If we're there at the start, we discuss what are the requirements, what is important to the business to make sure we choose the right thing. Whereas, you know, coming and say we must have this, it's never going to work. We're always going to end up with the wrong thing. We've got to work with those guys to make sure we get what we want, but it's right for the business.
I mean, it's a huge academic discipline, supply chain, Danny. I mean, like I say, that's what my master's is in, strategy and procurement. And yet, I don't think we teach supply chain, IT people and security cyber people about it.
No, when it comes down to, I mean, this goes back to the cyber foundry philosophy. You know, defend but innovate and grow. You know, it's all about moving. And what I think the problem is that, okay, you know, whatever the theories might be, you know, you get the lawyers involved, and what's the purpose of a service level agreement? What's the purpose of a contract? It's so you can sue somebody, get some money out of them when it goes wrong. They're not sold as opportunities for collaboration. People will not accept the fact. I mean, going back to various security requirements and vulnerability scans and the like. The truth is, and we have to accept it. Okay, it might be very expensive. We might not be even able to kind of replace this old legacy system running on XP or whatever it might be. What we have to do is recognize this is not a matter of saying, oh, well, I can't have my my nice clean certificate to say that we're secure. We have to recognize that not only can I not have it, it's because we are exposed to this risk. And the idea of that, of course, is not to say, well, we'll just accept the risk and all of that kind of stuff. It's that we have to, work together because the bad guys must love us. We spend so much arguing amongst ourselves that, of course, they sort of basically, it's like that we're in the scrum. We're in the scrum, and they walk all the way through while we're busy having a whatever and run off with the ball.
Well, we are running out of time. And so I'm I had lots of questions, that I wanted to ask you, but I think what I'll do is I'll come for some final thoughts on the bits that you really wanted to focus on in a moment. So that's what I'll come to you next, Lee, for, because I know there was a couple of elements of this that you're really passionate about. But we've got Alan still here in spirit and in text, because he tells him and Stuart talking about things like continuous control monitoring. Security controls have to be effective and proportionate to business risk. All of this is true. And Alan's also saying think infinity loop. And I thought you might be thinking OODA loop as well, Alan. Alan knows what I mean. So, let's think a little bit about how we sort of bring this to a bit of a conclusion, I suppose. Clearly a topic that we could talk on for a long time. I don't even know if we get value for money out of doing all of this. It's going to be a difficult one, because obviously the one person we forget to assess, or the one person or the one company, the supplier that we put down as low risk, is going to be the way in, because that's what the bad guys and gals do. We're going to look for whoever we think may not be protected and has access to that system. Lee, I know that you're passionate about this whole topic. What do you want to add to all of that? Is this the new insider threat, or?
Yeah, I actually asked the question during my recruitment process I'm going through at the moment, is actually which is the biggest risk? Is it insiders? Is it outsiders, those attackers that we don't know? Or is it the partners? And it's unbelievable the amount of people that says insiders. But I don't see it that way, because if you're looking at the larger kind of scenario, a partner, you'll give away much more access than you would do to your insider. But also, you don't do any vetting on them. When I started at the organisation, I had to have tests, DBS check on me and things like that. We haven't got any controls who's coming into these organisations, and we also don't know who's supporting those guys. So we could actually have, 3 companies away from ourselves, and we have got no idea regarding those controls that are on those people. So, as Jenny, you mentioned previously, it's a big thing for me. And I think when you outsource your systems to a company, you've got to trust those companies. And I believe you should always review the organisation and review it as you would do if it was, an organisation you was trusting and having to put full trust in. So in other words, you would do the penetration test. You would look at the kind of security model that they're operating in. And if they don't follow the standards, you should never go with them.
I think it's interesting, like Stuart's saying in the chat there as well, Lee, look, this is but they're all completely different, and it's not one size fits all. I think that's the problem, isn't it? I think Stuart's hit on the head, Danny. It's that this is not something that can be done along rails, and you can't just have the questionnaires and everything else. It's got to be taken case by case, and that's time consuming and expensive, Danny.
Yeah, and I think probably the worst question that is ever asked, from a boardroom is, what's our biggest risk? And everybody, and it's back down to the only being able to focus on one thing at a time. And it's just ignoring that complexity and coming up with our top 10s. And it's individual. I've been talking. Actually, we've just been in the recruitment process because we're still growing, and we just recruited for an ethical hacking post. And the question, the big test was not can you Kali Linux this and Splunk the other and all of that kind of toolbox. The question, my test question for all of them was, how are you going to teach your students to report those risks?
Yeah. And I mean, the answer from it reminds me very much of when people say, where's the greatest threat? And we say it's people. It's always the people. Social engineering, always going to be the people. How on earth can we monitor if we've got an organisation? I had one organisation with 95,000 employees, and this is how on earth can we keep an eye on them? And I said it's at line manager level. And I think that's the thing with suppliers as well. We have to, what I'm hearing is we have to work. There's so many. It's so different. It's so complicated. We're going to have to work with all the kind of stakeholders in the business for all those vendors to even get close, to even hope to get close to something looking like security.
It's the law of requisite variety.
Right. Well, do you know what, Danny? I'll look that up, because right now my head is battered with the thought of Blackpool Tower being on the beach, with On the Beach being with us while we were on the beach, despite having the best background anyone's ever had on my show so far. Thank you, Lee and Morton. And also just to say to all our audience, thank you for all your comments today, particularly to Alan Jenkins, who, of course, has to get the Tice mug for his valiant effort to come on. But the Demons defeated him this week. And I need to say thank you, because we are out of time. So I need to say thank you very much to Danny Dresner, Professor Dresner from the University of Manchester, and to the Information Security Officer from On the Beach, to Lee Morton, who is also regularly in our audience and comments to our discussions. And I want to say thank you to the Teissel for his dexterity today, finding all our articles. Today's show, we're supposed to have an extra guest. So again, just one more time, get well soon, Beatrice. We're sorry that you're feeling poorly. I want to say thank you to all of the audience and all of our sponsors over this last year of Tice. But for now, I will see you when the leaves start to fall in the autumn, because I am away on the beach, Lee. So for now, thank you, and we'll see you next time for another episode of teissTalk. Goodbye from me. Bye-bye.